Happy Lunch and Learn. Today, I want to talk with you a little bit about the interview process. I know many of you in this group are looking to level up your leadership and get the next position in line, whether it's teacher to lead teacher or department chair or assistant principal or whatever it may be. One of the things that I do, in addition to working my full-time gig, until this summer, and then I'll be launching full-time. One of the things that I do is I support leaders, and let me just fix this, help them get ready for interviewing to get the job of their dreams. And the way I do that is through actually a system called the driver's method. Now, some people come to me and they'll say to me, I only need help with my resume, or I really only need help with my interview skills. And my answer to that is, that's actually not true. You know, I hear their stories and it's really all a lot of the same things. And the thing is, the cover letter, the resume, and your performance at an interview is not something that's in a vacuum, right? You need to be able to live those things and be able to live, breathe, and understand those things. And you can't do that just by somebody saying, I need to work on my interview skills. So when I'm working with people or I'm talking to people and I tell them about what I do, they'll say, well, I don't need an 8-week program. I just need help with my interviewing. And my answer to them is exactly what I just said to you. I actually don't do that. I don't just take people's money and say, let me just do some mock interviews for you, because it's not gonna make a consistent change. What makes the change is going through and understanding your leadership. Because when you can understand your leadership and why you do the things that you do and what's important to you, then when you sit there very calmly in the interview, there's not one question they can ask you that you can't access. And that's really the issue, is even if they throw a question at you that is out of left field, you can start the conversation with something about your leadership. Another thing, well, I'll give you an example, because I was just speaking with somebody on the recently, and she was in a principal's interview, and the first question they asked her was, how would you respond to this scenario? And the scenario was, one of your teachers is having a class party, and your class party, a parent wants to come in and wants to read a book about a transgender bunny. And how would you handle that? And they did not give her any more information. So she was saying to me, I didn't know what they were looking for. I didn't know how to answer the question. And there are times when you will get questions that are completely out of left field. Someone asked me, what would you do if a snake crawled into your classroom? Like, really? But back to the transgender one, if you understand your leadership and you understand your mission and what's important to you, you can access that question. So I'll give you an example. And I have not practiced this. I'm just thinking about my drivers. I would start by saying, it's a very interesting question. And as an educator, my mission, of course, is to ensure that all students are supported and are, brought to the point of, all of their achievement. And I really believe in diversity, inclusion, and equity. But before I could even answer that question, I would have to look at some things in the district. Being a new principal of the district, I would have to understand a few things. I would have to understand, what is the school district's policy on parents coming in and reading books? What is the district's policy on diversion, equity, inclusion? Is there a unit at this grade level about these type of topics? Then I would want to preview the book. I would want to see what the book is. I would want to make sure that the book is in line with what the district policies and protocols are. And then I would like to meet with the parent and say, hey, you're interested in reading this book. I would share with her or him whatever information I had gleaned from the district. And being a principal in the district and not a superintendent or assistant superintendent, I may actually reach out to the curriculum instruction person or the head of special services and saying, what do we have in our social emotional learning practices for grade levels? Do we have curriculum around addressing this at certain grade levels? So really, I would have to do a lot of research. So if the teacher said to me, the parent wants to come in tomorrow, I would call the parent and say, actually, I have to do a little bit of research and I have to preview the book before I can, give you an answer. So tomorrow's not going to work. Could we move it back? And then I would make a decision based on all of that other information. Now, what I did just there is, I know I fumbled in the beginning, but I didn't worry about what I thought they wanted me to say. I just went through my process of what I would do. And really at the end of it, if they pushed me, my answer would be, well, with the information I have right now, I wouldn't be able to give her permission to read the book because I have a lot of homework to do. As a principal, decisions that I make have ripple effects. So it would really be important for me to make sure that I had all of my information. Now, I am a person who interviews people for positions of principal, assistant principal, CEO, and things like that. And we're not looking, when they ask us questions like that, or we ask a question like that, I don't usually ask such a big question like that, but we're actually looking for your decision-making process. We're not necessarily looking for where you stand at the end. It's not like it's right to read the book. It's not right not to read the book, or it's right not to read the book. It's not about that. It's about your process. So as you can see, sitting with somebody and saying, you need to work on your interview skills doesn't really help them if they don't understand the basis of their leadership. And I think that I can tell you from experience, when I got my principalship, I went to that interview. I went one day earlier, I just drove to see how long it would take me. Of course, I took the longest route possible, but I went with the book Tuesdays with Maury. I was wearing a black suit. I remember this like it was yesterday, and like a periwinkle sweater underneath. And I sat waiting for my turn, and I was reading Tuesdays with Maury, and I was very, very calm. And I went in, and there were, 12 people around a oblong table, and I sat in the front. And I went in with the attitude that this would be a great position to get if it's meant to be. And I'm just going to go in there and really be the person who I am and answer those questions. And I got the job. It wasn't a question. It was like within a day or two, they called and said, you're the one. So when you're interviewing for positions, or you're writing your resume, or you're working on your cover letter, you really have to kind of sit with yourself and figure out, what type of leader do I want to be? What type of leader am I? And the other reason why this is so important is because you don't want to get into a situation where you answered all the questions the way that you thought they wanted you to answer them, and then you're in a position that doesn't align with who you are or who you want to be as a leader. So let's say, for example, they ask you all sorts of questions about how to partner with your superintendent, right? And you figure, well, I'm going to answer it so that like I would be an island in the stream. The superintendent doesn't want to bother with me. And I answer it that way. And then they think they're hiring somebody who doesn't need any support. And then something comes up and you have to ask your superintendent for help. He's going to be like, this isn't the person who I thought I hired. Whereas if you say, I'm a brand new principal, and there might be times where I might reach out to the superintendent or the assistant superintendent just to run an idea by them, or just to check with my decision making, or maybe a colleague, a principal, because I know as a brand new principal, I'm going to have questions. And I understand that the decisions that I make have ripple effects to the larger district. So yeah, I might reach out, so to really present yourself in a way that's authentic. Because I've interviewed people who've come across one way and they sound really wonderful, and we've hired them. And mostly this is teaching positions. And when they get in, it's like, who is this person? This is not the person who we interviewed. So sometimes, often, the reason we're not getting the jobs is because we're not showing up the way we need to show up for ourselves and putting our authentic foot first. I do know that a lot of us, including myself, would like to say, I didn't get the job because they wanted to hire a man. I didn't get the job because they wanted to hire a person of color. I didn't get the job because there was an internal candidate. I didn't get the job because fill in the blank. But here's the reality. If you show up as your authentic self and you kill that interview, then there's no reason that they can't offer you the position or a position. And it'll be a position that will matter to you because it will be aligned to your mission. Yesterday, I started it was my first cohort meeting of my next cohort. And it's just, my cohort days are my most favorite days. I work all day and then I Zoom home and I start my cohort around 5. Yesterday, we're supposed to go for 1 hour. We went for an hour and a half because the group was so engaged, and we did something called a leadership dilemma. And my husband always comments after, he's like, you're just so happy after your cohort. And I was like, yeah, because I love serving people and I love engaging around our work and around drivers, the driver's method of leadership development. So yesterday was my first meeting of that cohort, which was completely amazing. So if you want to learn more about my cohort program or more about preparing for interviews and how I can help you do that, wait below, drop a GIF or something. But just understand that there's a method to my madness, and I'm not a person who's going to say, okay, I'll write your resume for $1,000 or $500. I will do your cover letter and do a mock interview and just take your money. That's not who I am. If I'm going to prepare you to get that job of your dreams, there's a lot more that goes into it. And I'm happy to do it. And I love to do it. So if that's you, drop below. But I hope you found some really good tips today and enjoyed your Lunch and Learn.